Hi and welcome to Kegels and Coffee. My name is Isabel and I'm your host. I will be honest, coming back from Europe this year has been a bit of a rough transition. I got back to the US on May 27th, 3 days after the Uvalde Texas shooting where 21 children and teachers died. 5 days later, 4 more people were killed in the hospital shooting in Tulsa, Oklahoma. At that point, we'd had 223 shootings in the US just in 2022. Today, as I'm recording this intro a month later, the number has crept up to 314 mass shootings in the US this year so far, including the most recent shootings on July 4th at the Highland Park Parade in Chicago, as well as in Massachusetts, California, Missouri, and Virginia. Just a couple days after I got back to Colorado, I met Julian in the yoga studio at the climbing gym. I was seeking a quiet place and some peace. So was she. Our chat quickly became deeper, and I openly shared my sadness around the recent shootings. Julian brought a new perspective, encouraging me to look beyond my fear and anger. She recognizes the need for gun laws to change, and also, being a yoga instructor, Reiki practitioner, and heart-centered facilitator, comes from a more spiritual background. One of the things she said that day that really stood out to me was, the amount of suffering that is happening in this world is a direct reflection of our inner turmoil. I'm neither a politician nor a gun law expert. I do know that in 2016, the National Rifle Association spent more than $50 million to back Donald Trump and several Republican Senate candidates. But this episode is not a political debate on gun law. It's rather an honest reflection on how gun violence in this country has affected me. I love the US very much and for many reasons. The land, the people, my family. I spent summers growing up with my grandparents in Montana, and when I moved to California at age 19, I immediately felt welcomed. I've experienced how this country is based on innovation and self-motivation. It truly has been for me a land of possibilities. I mean, I own a school bus with a climbing wall attached to the side of it that my dance troupe performs on. And I've driven this bus through the most breathtaking landscapes, past desert towers, canyonlands, through mountains and vast plains. This country has so much to offer, and it just makes me sad to see innocent people die when it can seem so evitable if only the right decisions were made. No, seriously, what am I doing with my life?
How did that come across? Did they hear me?
I feel like I'm losing my fucking mind.
You're messed up.
I need to just Netflix and chill.
Like, I'm gonna meditate like a badass.
It's just like this psychotic break, and then I get my period, and I'm like, oh, it was just your period again.
Am I the only one feeling this crazy? Julian.
Hello.
Will you be my therapist today?
I will try my best.
Thank you.
I'm out of my realm of education, but
I think just even spending this time with you recording, to me, is going to be healing. I have a feeling, because just the conversations we've had so far and the little time I've had to spend with you, it's soothing to voice my feelings and feel heard. So thank you for that.
yeah, thank you. I believe, we heal through relationship and right relationship and talking about our suffering and seeing humanity in each other, seeing that we're all suffering. And through that suffering, we can build a platform that gets people talking about their suffering and what they're feeling and bringing healing to the injustices and to our wounds, our suffering.
I could not agree more. Human connection. Human connection is, I believe, the reason that we're here, and one of the reasons I started my podcast. So you and I met at the Spot climbing gym in Louisville, and I'd just gotten back from Europe. and was seeking some peace to do a little bit of my own yoga practice. And I walked upstairs into the yoga room, and there you were doing the same thing. And I really quickly felt a connection with you. And honestly, this transition has been probably the hardest transition for me coming back from Europe. And part of it had to do with just coming back to such heavy and negative news in the US about the shootings. It was heartbreaking, and it really, really affected me. For me, the contrast was so severe because in Europe, I never think about public shootings. They just don't happen, or they happen really rarely. I mean, it's nearly impossible to have a gun. You know, you have to get a psychological test. You spend quite a bit of money also and to get a license. So it's just, bottom line, not something I ever think about when I am in Europe. I'm struggling with that, you know, and I was in the yoga class that same day thinking to myself, what would I do if I heard shots downstairs at the climbing gym, and where would I run to? And could I make it in time to get behind the climbing walls? And those are unpleasant thoughts to have. And what I realized in talking to friends during those days is that a lot of them responded with like, I just feel numb. Mm-hmm. So they don't feel the anxiety. They feel more of just like, you know, a numbness around it.
Yeah.
So that day, you and I started talking, and I remember one of the first things you said to me that really impacted me was, what we see going on in the world is a direct reflection of what's going on internally inside of us. Mm-hmm. And it was such a good reminder. And it's not something I want to hear because it's easy to point the fingers. Mm-hmm. But also, I feel anger. I feel resentment. You even asked me, have you ever wanted or have you ever taken revenge?
Yeah.
And you looked at me straight in the eyes, and I was just like, you're right. I mean, yes, it is. We have a lot of turmoil inside within. And so the outside world is not going to be pretty, because being human is a dual experience of joy and beauty and anger and resentment and suffering. Mm-hmm. But the reality of it is, what's going on in this country is, like, in my opinion, out of hand. I mean, we've had 223 shootings this year. And I don't know. I'm just trying to wrap my head around what this means and how and if I can live in this country right now. And that's just my complete, honest disclosure of where I'm at and how I feel.
Oh, that was really well put.
Thank you.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there. And I think something I'd like to touch upon was this idea of holding resentment and seeking revenge, because there's a lot of horrible crimes being committed. And there's so much polarization, not only on what to do about the situation, but in general. We're seeing a lot of polarization even in our own beings, in our own process of what's right and what's wrong. But I see this conflict, be it internal or external, being an opportunity for growth. I think about the shooting that happened in Uvalde, Texas, and the anger that we feel. Not only we feel, but the parents feel. I would ask somebody to consider what circumstances in a person's life had them behave in such a way. I would have you consider what type of bullying or shame may this person hold that had them pick up a gun and shoot another person to take somebody's life.
Yes.
I think that's how we start seeing the light. I think that's how we start letting compassion and forgiveness infuse our thoughts.
My question then is, though, on a practical level, why do thousands of innocent people, including little children, have to die in that process. And how can that be prevented?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a politician.
Right, exactly.
And so that, you know, it's like out of my scope of practice.
Totally.
Again.
Same.
But I do believe to stop the war, we have to heal the war within. And, you know, we consume so many violent video games as youths. And, you know, gun owner and non-gun owner alike, we need to start asking better questions rather than just villainizing guns. You know, there's definitely a point to be made that we don't need magazines that fire 100 rounds in 15 seconds. You know, there's a totally point to be made. But I believe that together we can move forward and we can evolve forward from this. I often say unity consciousness is the only way forward.
Right.
Otherwise, we're just going backwards. This division is killing us. And I'm so happy that we're having this conversation because I think a lot of the time when we hear a differing perspective, it's super easy to shut the other party down. We need to start listening to each other's perspectives, asking questions, coming to an understanding, deepening our understanding, even if it's an opinion differing from ours. And I believe that that's when we can start to dissolve our division. I really believe it's division that's killing the people.
Right.
Guns are a mechanism to do so. Yeah, it's the fear that we're consuming. It's, you know, the violence that we're consuming. It is becoming, we're becoming really desensitized to it.
Except for me.
Yeah.
I'm in yoga class going, where do I go if I hear gunshots?
I know,
cannot watch
which is
violent videos or movies.
Me either. But we can't become desensitized to it because these feelings of anger and frustration and sadness act as an internal GPS, global positioning system, to point us in the right direction, to point us into gun responsibility, into love and away from suffering.
So my GPS is pointing me to go back to Europe right now.
Understandably.
I'm just going to be honest.
Yeah,
my
of course.
GPS right now, and that is heightened anxiety and like fear to be in public places and like fear of this government. I'm afraid of this government in some ways right now and what's happening in this country and what's going to happen in the next election. And my GPS is kind of like the flight one.
You know, I do see in some ways that the government isn't serving the people. I see that we're being fed so much fear in our media, and fear only creates division, it creates disease, decay, even death. And that's what we're seeing here. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are feeling the same way that you're feeling and want to flee the United States. And we're, you know, it's unfortunate because on the other side, we're so free. I mean, to be able to own a gun is a right. It's in the Constitution. It's protecting ourselves, which is beautiful. But it also and it's so that our government can't go rogue on its people. But it's also creating a lot of suffering. So how do we bridge that gap?
Right.
I think the only way to evolve is together. And it's whether you're right wing, left wing, no wing, I don't know. We need to reach across party lines and come to some type of agreement that can move us in the direction of healing.
Yeah.
there's ways that we can preserve our rights as citizens of the United States while still regulating. And I use that term lightly because I don't want to turn anybody off from this idea, honestly. But there's ways in mandating, for example, the number of bullets that can be shot through a gun within 15 seconds.
Right.
Maybe it's age.
Yeah.
Being 21 to own a gun. I don't know. Maybe it's red flag laws.
Mm-hmm.
It's less about controlling the votes for political parties, and it's more about saving our children.
Right.
Saving the church from being blown up, saving the grocery store from being taken hostage. There's got to be a movement forward together.
It is interesting that what you're saying earlier about how you use that term lightly. It's really intense for me to feel like because of that division and that separation, I'm scared to say certain things. Mm-hmm. I've been told I should own a gun. I've been told maybe you don't have to own a gun, but you should know how to shoot a gun. These are things that don't happen in Europe. These conversations don't happen there, period. It's just not part of that culture. As you said, has been here from the beginning of the United States of America. But this feeling of going back to what I was saying, the separation, the division in this country, and like being afraid to say something against or pro guns, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there you see that, like, because I have friends in Montana that shoot guns. They love shooting guns. I've shot guns with them.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? My dad is a hunter. My grandfather was a hunter. He owned guns. I mean, not automatic weapons, but guns. And so it is a touchy subject. And whenever you notice yourself getting nervous to talk about something, you're just like, oh, wow, I really am scared to say the wrong thing and piss someone off.
I am.
And that is the exact, representation of what's going on in this country.
Yeah, it's funny because I forget who I was listening to, but they said, nothing is impossible in the United States of America. We have self-driving cars. We can go to the moon. We can do whatever we want. But as soon as the topic of gun control surfaces, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't
know what to do.
Yeah.
We don't.
Yeah.
And we don't know what to do, but there
are possibilities. There are possibilities if we wanted to. And we both know, and we talked about this earlier, that this country is very profit driven. It is profit driven. It's like as capitalist as it can get. And like you said, companies are interested in making money.
The greed's killing us. And I don't think that we shouldn't be deterred from having these conversations because it is scary if you let it be. It's scary if you don't trust. If you don't trust that there's a possibility of the United States without gun violence. I mean, I'm here saying, bring your idealism. Mm-hmm. Bring your idealism. Let's figure out a solution so that, I don't know how many people have died this year due to gun violence, but could we drop that by 100, 10,000? Every year, can we get a little bit better? Can we not, instead of dropping the conversation around gun violence, can we mine our own behaviors? Yeah, it's a big conversation, this is. It's nuanced and me not being a politician, but me understanding my spiritual beliefs and seeing how society has shifted and the fear that society feels, I understand that there has to be a change made in our policies and in our government systems. Some of these systems need to dissolve and decompose, and we need to give them up as an offering for something better to be created.
Well, this
for the people.
Yeah, this reminds me of what you were talking about earlier, the age of Aquarius, because we're moving from. No, let's get like really woo hoo ha ha.
Okay.
Because I'm like into it. You're like okay, because I'm
Let's
really.
go there.
Yeah, I know, because I'm into it.
Yeah, so just to be brief, we're moving out of an age of Pisces, which was very much about building the individual, which is needed. We needed a sense of identity and we needed to grow as individuals. But now we're moving into an age of Aquarius, which is about collaboration, it's about cohesion, it's about community, and harmony between that. And that transition has created a very dystopian society, unfortunately, due to censorship and political corruption. But I believe that, many of the bodies we've built in terms of systems, over these past 2,000 or more years, need to die and decompose so that we can birth a new paradigm of business and government. We're moving from self-centered to heart-centered, where the heart includes everybody. We need to move to a system that is inclusive of everyone's rights, of everyone's beliefs, and it's easier said than done. And like I said, this is creating a very difficult transition.
Right, and that actually now brings me back to something that we started off with, which was the world as a reflection of our internal, situation. Going back to what can we do if you're not if you're not a politician, if you're not an activist, if you're actually just on a day-to-day, basis, again, easier said than done, but those little moments of compassion, those little moments of human connection, those little moments, the ripple effect that Mother Teresa, what's that quote again?
It says, "I cannot alone change the world. I can cast a stone across the water to create many ripples."
So, yeah.
Yeah, something I say about this, and to put it so simply, there's so much good in the world. There's so much good in the world. Miracles happen every day. And A Course in Miracles says, a miracle is everyone's birthright. Purification is necessary first. And so what that means is we have to clear away the obstacles to love. We have to clear away the blockages. For example, it's so funny when there's a cloud covering the sun, we often say, oh, the sun's not out. The sun's out. The clouds are in the way. So we have to clear those clouds. Well, what are the clouds? It's the corruption. It's the corruption in ourselves. It's the blockages and the obstacles to love. It's the obligation. It's the guilt. It's the revenge and the resentment. We've got to clear that away so that we can see the good. That's spiritual hygiene.
Shame. Remember, we're talking about shame. Yes.
That's a hard one.
Thousands of years of shame.
Thousands of years of shame. Yeah, of course. If you think about Christianity, the religion that the United States has grown up with, the first thing that, when Adam and Eve were in the garden and God came up to them, the first thing is I feel ashamed. So this is shame is what us Westerners have to overcome. This is what we have to clear away. And it's, government hygiene, it's spiritual hygiene, it's media hygiene. We need to clean this shit up. Mm-hmm. It's really messy and it's really divisive.
Yeah.
And it does start at home.
That's true.
It's call that person that you've had some beef with, and just ask how they are. Extend an olive branch.
Yeah.
Peace is our refuge.
Right.
And it's hard to make a change in the government when you're not on the inside. But that's where these conversations are really healing and important to me. Stopping the war, healing the war within, raising our children better to be more loving, to let love be their compass.
Right.
Any decision made from the heart is a decision done rightly.
Yeah. Despair. That's the word that I was trying to find, because I think we mentioned it earlier. Like, how can we have conversations within that despair and this situation and, the anxiety that I'm feeling, having dialogues, remaining loving, remaining open.
Yeah, it's like, how can I have a little bit of hope?
Yeah.
Because we all feel a little bit broken, but that's how the light gets in. And it's so cheesy and cliche.
I know, but it's so true.
That feelings of despair and doubt. Well, what's the opposite of despair and doubt? It's faith.
Right.
And we live in a dualistic society. So can we focus our attention on faith, on the vision? Of course there's going to be doubt. Of course there's density. But if we can hold on to that vision and we can use our voice for good, we can start having this dialogue, start listening to each other, understanding how we're feeling about a subject. Doesn't mean we're going to solve the world's problems, but don't you feel a little bit closer?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, and that's the reason I decided to record this today, because you're right. I mean, I'm not a politician. I'm not going to change anything within the system right now. And I was really scared to even have this conversation publicly. And quite honestly, Julian, like, this is the first time I even speak out my problems with anxieties in public places, because I have been ashamed and afraid to share something that I felt like was not that important, because it's most likely, but maybe, but who knows, not going to happen to me. Just deal with it, Isabel. Be stronger. It kind of started creeping up on me. And for the first time, I'm giving it a voice. And even that act of saying, I am scared in the midst of my yoga class without feeling weird or ashamed about it is already liberating to me. To have somebody sit with me and say, like, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. I have no solutions, but I understand.
I see this platform as a passage from me to we on behalf of collective healing, of collective consciousness. I'm really interested in what the listeners have to say about gun responsibility.
Yeah.
I use gun control really lightly, and this may be my own anxiety around this topic.
Right.
But because people who own guns, most people who own guns, want to preserve their rights. We can do both. Why can't we? A lot of this, I hate to stay on the topic, like the political topic for too long, but I think it's a bipartisan compromise. We need to be focused on corrections and countermeasures that reduce these tragedies that have become so common. Because, you're anxious about walking into a grocery store or a movie theater, and I've become desensitized to it. Mm-hmm. Although I've recognized that I've become desensitized and do my own inner work to see the futility in what's happening. And we can't continue to turn a blind eye. I consider myself a really compassionate person. But compassion has nothing to do with it when I'm numb to it.
That's a problem that I don't have, because I'm feeling a lot. I spent an hour by the creek the other day crying, just after reading and learning more about the details of the shooting in Texas. And I guess, like, again and again, I would just go over to how are these parents feeling? How are they dealing? And it was really, really difficult for me to, in my mind, it goes there where it's like envisioning these little children so scared in this like classroom and somebody out there and the fear that they went through. And somebody told me the other day that actually when teachers are making like wish lists for their, what they would like to have in their classroom, you would hope there'd be like, more art supplies and pictures and stuff like that. She asked for one of those metal bars that you shove down and then nobody can get inside of that room from the outside. So basically the gunman could not enter the room. That was like number one wish list.
What I see happen when we start talking about gun control is, and obviously that topic gets shut down quickly because what do we do? Well, what we do is, there's, I'm getting ahead of myself, but, there's an idea of integrating gun safety training, safe storage proposals, bolstering school safety. These are beneficial. Don't get me wrong. They're super helpful. Schools should feel safe, but they're not the only solutions. It's not the only solutions. With a right comes a duty. Matthew McConaughey had sent a letter to, I believe, a statesman about the difference between gun control and responsibility. Gun control being a mandate that infringes on our rights, and the second, gun responsibility, a duty that will preserve it. There is laws that can be put in place that actually preserve the right to own a gun.
Right. It's not black or white.
It's not black or white,
yes.
And I think that there's a movement forward that we can take that reaches across party lines, and companies, organizations, responsible gun owners, we have a big role to play. There has to be more education around it. There has to be, there's so many things that can happen. We have to take action.
Yeah.
We have to take action. And I'm not, for people who are against gun control, I see you. I understand you want your rights. You deserve your rights. But there is a duty to keep children safe.
Yeah.
There's a duty.
Everyone's safe.
Everyone's safe.
Yeah.
Yes. Because, like Matthew McConaughey said, lost lives matter.
Yeah.
They matter. These people matter. We can't keep looking at the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your yoga studio should be a place of refuge.
I know.
And so it hurts me to hear that. And it was really an eye-opening experience to meet you in that studio. Not only to talk about unity consciousness and, where you're from and what you're doing here and what your why is and what projects you have going on. And to meet you as a human and to be able to dig into conversations with such an open heart and a warm invitation to be who you are and say what you need to say in order to feel better. Yeah. I think that's what it's about, is holding space for each other. I asked you earlier, how does it feel when you're loved? How does it feel? For me, it feels inviting. It feels inclusive. I feel accepted and seen. And when someone or something has the space to be themselves, they have permission to expand.
Yeah, instead of contract.
And when we expand, we can have better conversations. We speak from our heart. We're more understanding. We're more inclusive. Things become natural. We're able to evolve.
And grow and learn and not be scared of mistakes, but actually be creative.
Right, which brings me to maybe a sidebar, but this idea of canceling somebody because they've made a mistake really, really frustrates me, because what we're not doing is calling somebody forward. We're not giving anybody the room to make a mistake.
The opportunity to grow.
Yes.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. And we do it with our most loved ones.
So don't cancel us.
I know. Please don't cancel us. We're really trying to just
open the
I
conversation.
do love what you said though, and I think this is a perfect sort of last note takeaway is that how do you feel? What is it like to feel loved? And on that same note, I was thinking about what are the things that bring me joy in love, and ultimately, it is the human connection. And it can be in that room. I did not know you. Being invited by a stranger to be myself and making a connection to the point where we're no longer strangers, within minutes. And that's so beautiful. That is the essence, the epitome of the beauty of life, in my opinion. And it can happen with somebody that you've known for your whole life, and it can happen with somebody that you've known for 5 minutes. When I walk in the village in Spain, Coronadea, where we spend our winters, and I go grocery shopping, you go to the the carniceria, the butcher, then you go to la verdureria, where you buy the vegetables, and then you go to, and everywhere you go, people oh, Isa, how are you? ¿Cómo estás? They give you the cilantro because they know you like cilantro. Those little things, those little moments, and they're not huge or world-changing, or like you said, we're not changing any laws or anything like this, but those are the moments I think that sometimes keep me going.
Yeah, and whether you believe in reincarnation or not, I want to say this because I think it's really important, because we're all searching for this purpose. But the purpose here, the whole reason for incarnating, is to heal. And we heal through the virtue of compassion. Compassion is what dissolves the ego. It dissolves the harshness. The ego will always find a way to divide us and find reasons not to be compassionate. Be compassionate anyway.
The ripple effect, the little ripple effect on the lake,
Absolutely. I think it's an act of kindness. And I think compassion is an act of kindness. Forgiveness is an act of kindness. Harmless speech is an act of kindness. Healing is an act of kindness. Going to your yoga class is an act of self-love. For me, it goes back to healing the war within. For me, it goes back to what virtues do I want to embody? And by virtues, I mean higher states of consciousness. I mean compassion, wisdom, forgiveness, divine love, inclusiveness. There's so much suffering in the world. There's so much suffering in the world. I can feel it. I can see it. I read it. We're talking about it. I see the suffering in you. And I honor that. And I believe that it goes much deeper than just gun control. And I believe that there's eons of social conditioning and program that's really fucking everyone up. And our thoughts and our thinking and our way of moving throughout the world has become highly conditioned. And so, I don't know. I mean, maybe we didn't solve the world's problems today, but I think we're in gentleness training.
Yeah.
We're learning to be softer, and that is progress. It's a step forward.
I agree. Yes. Cheers to that. Amen.
Yakida.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been wonderful.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And please feel free to send questions, comments, and topics you would like to hear about to Isabel at kegelsandcoffee.com. That is ISABEL at kegelsandcoffee.com, or you can find me on Instagram under Kegels and Coffee. Take good care, stay tuned, and remember, when in doubt, drink coffee or do Kegels.